Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the office. My name is Luis Emilio Vargas, and today's episode will be talking about car purchases and why these tips and tricks will be helpful for your next car purchase. Thanks for tuning in.
What's going on, folks? It's your boy Steve. I got me rolling.
And Ashley got me rolling.
Today we got the homegirl E approved.
Wow.
Man, when I say we
You stupid. Gotcha, bitch.
The Hiltoma has been through it, okay?
Bruh.
It's been through it, but it's been survived.
Shit, did. Hey, but we took her out that help to her, and then come here. Look at this. Going.
Hey, look at that damage on that.
V8
Look at
on.
that damage on that bumper.
Now see the difference? Hiltoma to this.
Wow,
It's
$700 for
Yeah, how was the
96
experience?
months.
It was very good. They, you know,
With a
very
trade-in.
fast. I love her. She's very good at it. Promotion.
Promotion.
She needs a promotion.
Stupid.
Also, what did we ask her for?
Just your insurance, not insurance, your license, your identity, your name, that's it.
That's it. ID, mail.
No credit, no nothing. Whoa.
Yeah. She is a 0 credit score. Got her approved. You're in the
18 years
market.
old.
ID, mail. Shoot us a DM. We'll get you rolling off today.
Yep.
Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the office. I'm your host, Luis Emilio Vargas. That was a crazy video, right? $700 for 84 months or whatever the case may be. That's insane. But that's a symptom, right, of maybe making a bad car purchase, right? Maybe not having the right people in your corner to go help you. One, appraise the vehicle, because that vehicle looked like it had damage. If you really run the term, right, of that 84 months for the $700, right? I think it was 96 months. I forgot what it was. It's gonna come out to almost $70,000.
Fatality. Thank you. Come again.
God knows with that damage and the way that car looked, God knows that car was probably worth $20,000 at most. And that's what it's appraised at. That's not even including the condition, which you see the damage, maybe a mechanical condition, Carfax, collision, stuff like that. So anyways, and that being said, that's just a telltale sign to bring somebody in your corner to help either fix the vehicle you had running before you do that trade-in, or make a educated car purchase. For the purposes of this video, I'll talk about some things to highlight for your next car purchase, just to be cognizant of it. The average car purchase right now in the United States, right to this day, is $49,000 a year. $49,000, the average car sales. That's before tax, title, insurance, and all that. And then the average APR right now, let's say you had like 770 credit. The average APR right now is 10% at the dealership. Right? Think about that $49,000 car before tax, title, fees, and all that stuff, and think about that 10% interest, right? Let's use basic numbers. 10% of $49,000 is $4,900, right? And if you multiply that by 12, you know, that's gonna be around $400 a month. There's literally gonna be around $400 a month that you're gonna be paying in interest just to buy that $49,000. So you gotta ask yourself, is that $400 a month worth you being in that vehicle, right? And that's only interest. It's not even factoring depreciation. It's not even factoring any other depreciation, such as collision, stuff like that. Additionally, the average car after 5 years loses around 50 to 60% of its worth, of its value. So for example, that $49,000 car will probably be worth 20 after that term. But then again, if you factor in the $400 a month times 12, you know, there goes $4,800 a year that you paid in just interest alone.
What's the matter? What? There are no olives here. There are no olives here.
Finish him!
Gotcha, bitch.
My Lord, a snapping curl off.
Not including the principal balance, right? So those are the things you gotta ask yourself before you enter a car deal like that. Additionally, people always say that the biggest investment somebody makes in life, all right, is home, right? Buying a home. And from my anecdotal experience, should I say, I see people driving cars, right? Being a driver of a car, to include someone who actually owns the car, either custodial possession or actual possession, right? Like they actually are on lien or they actually own the car, right? Versus someone who rents or lives in a home or who actually owns the home. And so, in that being said, is I would deduce with that logic that the biggest purchase that someone actually ever makes that is in essence an asset, even though it's depreciating, is a car. And the chances are that a lot of people are not as appraised on why it's very important to buy a car when it comes to doing a pre-purchase inspection, assessing comps, assessing equity in the vehicle, as appropriate to the condition of the vehicle and what it's listed for. So this video will help you with that. But that being said, I'd like to start off with, so how to buy a car, right? How to buy a car. I like to first start off with basically, you got to choose your vehicle. And my definition to choose your vehicle is not specifically the vehicle, but more the lifestyle you live versus the vehicle that you need. In my opinion, should be commensurate to each other, right? Do you have children, right? If you have 3 children, don't buy a convertible, right? Don't buy a coupe, right? It's hard to have a Charlie, right? You buy a Challenger and you have to fold the seat down to get a baby seat in there because you're trying to, live a lifestyle that may not be commensurate to having children, right? So you may want to get like a 4-door car or a bigger car, mid-size sedan or a bigger size sedan, right? But obviously, find the car that's appropriate to your lifestyle. Additionally, understand your budget, right? Budget meaning like, what is your income? What are your expenses? Meaning your expenses to live. And then you have your revolving income. Like Dave Ramsey likes to use the term house poor. House poor is when like around 30 to 40% of your base income or more is revolving around your house payment or your home or your rental payment, right? For example. So basically, if around 40 to 50% or more of your residual income is going towards your rent, that means you're house poor, right? Don't be necessarily car poor, where like you don't have enough available disposable income after everything's said and done before your car payment that puts you in a tight bind because emergencies happen and you may not be prepared for them financially, and then this is where it causes more trauma. Additionally, understand your credit and your options, right? When you go buy cars, what happens is, let's say that $49,000 car that we use, which is a new car, which I don't believe in buying new cars because, again, they go down 60% in value, give or take. And you gotta ask yourself, that from 49 plus the taxes, titles, and fees would be 56. From 56 to 20, that's $36,000. You gotta ask yourself, what's your net worth, right? If some people don't even know how to answer that question, right? Your assets versus minus your liabilities equals your net worth. Your assets plus your liability. So let's say, for example, if you have $1 in your pocket but you owe nobody, that means your net worth is $1. If you have $1 million but you owe $1.5 million, that means your net worth is negative $500,000, right? That means you're in debt $500,000, right? So that person with $1 in their pocket has a higher net worth than someone who has $1 million but owes $1.5 million, right? So just be cognizant. If you're gonna lose $36,000, you should have a net worth that is, I would say, commensurate enough to digest that without feeling some type of pain or residual effects after that. That's food of thought, right? And that being said, when you look at your credit situation, right, you want to assess your credit, make sure that you have good credit or fair, or I don't want to say fair, but credit that I would say like at least 700 should be good. When it comes to getting a reasonable rate. What happens is when you go to a dealership is never going to give you a competitive rate. They will give you a rate that is competitive, whereas somebody who has bad or challenging credit may not have a better rate. And then you have like the working class, like mid-tier rate, and then you have excellent credit, right? Good credit, 800, 805, pushing their 840 is the max, I believe. And so they will give you a good rate relative to people who walk into the dealership. But when you go to Credit Karma, right, for example, and you sort there, you look at your credit profile, and you look at refinancing options, those rates are a lot more competitive than a dealer. You go to a credit union, like I used to have a Navy Federal Credit Union. They have really good rates for used car loans, right? And so this is where you go and you explore that. And they're really competitive. They're really like, they're really amenable for the client there, because you want a used car. They'll give you a blank check after you pre-qualify and everything. They'll give you a blank check. They say, hey, write the VIN number, write the price, give it to them. They'll cash it, and then literally they'll send, you gotta send the paperwork in, and that's it. And the title gets filed under Navy Fed. So it's a really clean and concise transaction. So let's continue. So when you choose your vehicle, right, shop around for good and shop around for like good rates with the vehicle, right? When I say good rates, is like, let's say for example you want a Toyota Camry. I think Toyotas and Hondas are the most reliable cars, because I feel like they are prone to someone who's neglecting the vehicle, right? I find that people who are not as mechanically inclined, or who are not as proactive with repair and preventative maintenance, those cars can withstand that. And that's why I say that it is a good, reliable car. Because I find that regardless if you neglect those cars a little bit, they hold up. Whereas like a foreign vehicle wouldn't, or whereas maybe some Dodges or Jeeps wouldn't, you know, because they don't have the best reputation, Kias, right? And so I would say if you buy a Honda Accord, four-door Honda Accord, 60,000 miles, right? One of my best ways to like assess value is you go on KBB, right? Kelley Blue Book. You can put the VIN number. You can specifically look at that price of the car for what it's going for. I would never put a used car under excellent condition, because you always got to factor in the preventative maintenance up to that point. And so you look at the price that's quoting you there versus the price of what is listed online. And then sometimes they'll offer you comps, right? Different vehicles of the same trim, same mileage-ish, color and sort of kind of, right? And then you could kind of triangulate what you're seeing from KBB, what you're seeing from the dealer, what you feeling based on the trims and the options in your finance. And that's how you can make a more educated decision. Additionally, you have cars that may have several owners, right? I'm the type of person that if a car has more than 2 owners relative to the time, or let's say for example, car's 5 years old and it has 2 owners, I'm like, okay, one, the original owner and the one off the lease, right? No problem. But let's say if the car is like 5 years old and has like 4 owners, that's a red flag, right? Because usually people who, it's kind of like you're not necessarily emotionally invested into the car, so you're not gonna keep up with the maintenance, you're not gonna keep up with the reliability and those type of things, right? So this is where you become cognizant on like those type of things. Additionally, Carfax, right? You want to make sure the Carfax is good. Collisions, frame damage, airbags deploying, those things really depreciate value. And what happens is when they do depreciate value, the dealers weaponize it, right? So if the car has an accident, you trade it in the car with an accident, they're gonna weaponize that against you. But if you sell it on a marketplace or a private seller, a lot of that is subjective. Depending on how much impact it is, right? So this is where you really do your research to understand that. Once you find your vehicle, let's talk about that. So you run your comps like we talked about earlier, mileage, features, right? Like I like cars with forward collision warning, bells and whistles, sunroofs, you know. I like all that. Leather, I like that, right? So I usually try to get the most bang for my buck. I like to say the fries and the drink, right? When you go to McDonald's, fries and the drink, right? That's how I see it. So you do that, right? You do the Car Gurus comparison, right? Comparison, you do all the research. Sometimes they have the Carfax there. You can look up the Carfax, right? Then I would stay away from North State cars, right? Anything from the North, any car from like any of those, like Detroit, Jersey, New York, tri-state area, any of those, I would stay away from that, because if they are relatively within like, you know, 60,000 miles, they're gonna have some rust, they're gonna have some deterioration, and the more fancier the car, the more finicky the electronics gets. And I've been under there turning wrenches. I know how ugly it gets. So I would recommend to stay away from North cars, go Southern cars, you know, away from the water, of course. So maybe Texas, or maybe somewhere a little more north, like Oklahoma or something like that. And then once you finally actually find the vehicle, right, I would definitely start staging a mechanic, right? My definition of staging a mechanic is have a few people in the queue. Hey, I have a mechanic buddy here. And when I say mechanic buddy, I'm not talking about somebody that, you know, like, I would say he should have a scan tool. He should have a scan tool. They should have a lot of wisdom in regards to assessing cars before purchase. And at the same time, they should tell you what they're looking for and how, like, basically they shouldn't just tell you. They should kind of paint the picture of what they're looking at. That way you and him could come to the decision, because what happens if you buy the wrong car, it'll be a finger pointing session, right? Same thing, like if you go to a doctor, I'm not necessarily going to just have my ear open and listen to a doctor. I want to challenge them to understand why they think like that, why they recommend a surgery, why, you know, my body's acting like this, like that, right? So just don't be a slave to what somebody else tells you, right? So stage your mechanic. Before you stage your mechanic as well, is go on YouTube and, honestly speaking, learn about your car. And of course, you may have driven Honda Accords your whole life, but this trim, this year, this feature, this platform, right, may be very unique versus previous models, right? I used to have an Ultima hybrid, and Ultima hybrids are, in my opinion, Ultimas are great cars. I just feel like they don't have the best reputation because most of those people who own them, they may not keep up with the service as much as they should, and that's where things break. And then the you know, the stigma is out there about them not being reliable. Is there some merit to the CVT transmissions? Of course, yes. They are prone to fail, but I think generally speaking, people who own Ultimas, and this is maybe I'm reaching here, people may not be keeping up with the maintenance as much as they should, and this causes the stigma of those cars not to be reliable. Who knows? That's my, because I own 2 Ultimas, and in my opinion, they were great cars. They were very forgiving. And the previous owner of my Ultima that I owned before, in my opinion, he neglected the car, and I fixed it, and it was great. But yeah, learn about the vehicle, right? Learn about the vehicle on YouTube, put a face to a name, learn about the common causes of these issues, if it's transmission issues or engine recalls or any of those significant things, right? Do some research. That way, when you go to this dealership, you are well informed, you already know what you're looking at. And then last few things I will tell you is, if you buy an Ultima, for example, let's say, remember for example, if you buy a Nissan, buy it at a dealership that's a Nissan dealership. Do not buy a Kia at a Jeep dealership. Do not buy a BMW at a Buick dealership, because what happens is, chances are the salesperson is not necessarily going to be informed on your vehicle, because it comes from a warehouse. They're going to butter it up and glaze a donut in essence, and then bring it around the showroom floor, and then you're going to walk in exclusively for that car. But they're a Buick dealer. They don't know anything about BMWs. They don't know anything about Hondas. And so what happens is, it's the blind leading the blind. And literally, it's like a kiosk that's with you in the passenger seat, right? You're driving the car and whatever, you're pressing buttons, because all his job is to press buttons to get you to finance that car or to buy that car, right? So whereas if you go to a Honda dealership and you're buying a Honda, the person may be a little more informed, because they have trainings and they have like seminars on how this new feature here and there, and then obviously some enthusiasts, right? Because I would say most people that work at a dealership, they have some type of enthusiasm for the platform. So, and then one thing I would encourage you to do is, be cognizant of depreciation, platform issues, right? Let's say like BMWs have transfer case issues depending on the model that you buy. Lastly, so what I would recommend is also call your insurance company, inquire about your rates, right? Imagine you have a $600 car payment, and I'm just being extreme here, and your insurance that you expected to be $100, $150 is $300 a month, right? For full coverage. So just be cognizant of that, because it gets really costly. And then, of course, I would just come into the back. I would do some Yelp review on the dealership. I always like to start from the worst review, working up, because in my opinion, you buy a cake when you buy a cake, you buy it for the cake and not for the frosting, right? So most people scrape the frosting off for the cake, not the cake off for the frosting, right? So in my opinion, when you go to these places to buy a car, you want to be privy of the negative reviews. That way you could have back pocket information when they go and they try to offer you these coverages that are useless, or they have like shady practices. Like I went to a dealership one time where they were trying to hide stuff. They cleared a few codes. That was a lie. They had the negative
Gotcha, bitch!
removed before I got there, and it was just a whole bunch of, like, I like to go straight into the engine bay, and of course they gave me a hard time going into the engine bay. I found a few things, I walked away. But the premise is that you want to find those things out before you go there. Then they're going to offer you some coverages. You may want to reduce those coverages or remove it, such as gap. You should always have gap, in my opinion. You never know what happens. So in conclusion, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Again, this is The Office, and thank you again for your participation. If you have any questions, any things you want to talk about, please leave a comment or send me a comment directly, and then we'll go from there. Besides that, thank you again, and enjoy.
You are the father.
Gotcha, bitch.
Second Division? In the office, baby.